Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Page Tune with PL Stuart. And we are here today with two awesome authors. Well, three awesome authors, counting PL. But we're here with Christopher Russell and Jeff Speight. So, Jeff and Christopher, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, Christopher and Jeff, do you want to tell us a little bit about your books and kind of your work?
Christopher, go ahead.
Oh, I was literally going to try to turn it over to you. Perfect. So I'm Christopher Russell. I'm author of Divinity's Twilight Rebirth and its sequel, Divinity's Twilight Remnant. Oh, PL's got one right there. The sequel's coming out September 14th. And it is a steampunk epic fantasy with a lot of focus on tech, a lot of focus on military fantasy. But it's essentially the story of a group of 8 military cadets who are forced on the run after a tragic mistake by their ancestors rears its ugly head in the present. And so it's also going to be in a combined universe. There's going to be a lot of spin-offs related to that. But if you like hard magic systems, if you like a lot of snark between the main cast, if you like a lot of sword and sorcery and military aspects, that'll be right up your alley. Very Brandon Sanderson Cosmere-ish.
Awesome. I'm Jeff Speight, author of Paladin Unbound, first in a trilogy of the Archives of Evelium. We follow Umar the Peacebreaker, a half-orc mercenary, as he's kind of forced to make a very tough decision about unveiling the past that he has kept very carefully hidden in order to go on and save his world and his friends. So the second book, Mystic Reborn, hopefully will be out early next year, maybe April timeframe. So we'll see.
Wow.
I know I'm looking forward to that one too. Jeff and I recently joined a writing group together, so everybody's hurriedly reading through everybody's back catalogs.
That's awesome. Well, I think Steve's TBR is groaning again as he starts to add your books to it. So I'm lucky. I already have both of them. So and they're going to be read at some point this year. So I'm really excited to do that, especially. Your intro to your work only pumped me up even more. Oh, whoa!
There we go. He pulls out the deep cut right from his second shelf there.
Yeah, it's on my TBR shelf. Just it never gets any smaller.
See, the whole thing is his TBR shelf. That's what he's not giving away.
Yeah. It is really.
So, gentlemen, so we are. Oh, there's Laura Lullaby's one of our faves. Howdy, Lana.
Hey, Laura. Nice to see a comment.
Yeah,
I know that we've talked to you a bit on Instagram and maybe Twitter.
Oh, fantastic. Oh,
Drew's right here. Book
there
was just yeah.
Hey, Dave. What's up? And all of
Mr. Philip
Oh,
Chase.
honored. Yeah, big. Yeah. You guys are drawing a crowd.
Yeah, look at this.
Nancy. Yeah.
Hey, Crystal.
Us, you, everyone.
All right, see, fantastic. So we are all four of us in some form indies, booktubers, writers. So you're both indie authors with, again, growing readership, some awards, some, like, what do you think of the indie scene? Like, now that you're part of it and you're immersed in it, what do you think of the indie scene? Booktubers, indie writers, indie poets. Like, what's, how are you judging the landscape now, the indie landscape now that you're kind of immersed in it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, go ahead, Christopher.
Well, the best way to judge this is probably to take it from an outsider's perspective from the very beginning. I grew up just going to Barnes & Noble, picking up books off the shelf, and that was the main way that I got all my reading done. If it wasn't in Barnes & Noble, I didn't think it exists. I didn't even go to Amazon anywhere else. And so I was very much a trad author until I started looking at publishing books myself. And I ended up going with a small imprint, mainly for them being able to produce my physical copies. Ebook and everything else is effectively indie or self-published, whatever way you want to look at that. And it's just incredible the amount of networking and marketing there is in this sphere, that there's a lot of legwork. Of course, trad authors have to put in that same amount of time unless they're at the top of the list like Brandon Sanderson. But I've met so many incredible people. I didn't know BookTube was a thing. I didn't know Bookstagram was a thing. I didn't know that you could put book in front of literally anything and make it a thing in the indie community. But no, so many great and incredible people, so much support, and I'm just really happy to have this community. I don't think I'd want to publish any other way now.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would say, I can't think of a time where there's been more quality product coming out of an indie scene. I mean, this is just fantastic. The amount of content that's coming out, both from the authors and from the YouTubers and booktubers and bloggers and everything. It's fantastic, and it's also such a supportive community. It really is like rarely do you bump into anybody who isn't willing to step up and help you out or have a conversation or whatever. So it's been fantastic to become a part of the indie book community.
Yeah, it's awesome, and part of this is you folks coming on here. Oh, what was that, Jeff? Oh,
thank you, Jeff, for making the book on Kindle free for its anniversary.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Happy Book-iversary.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Philip Chase, yeah, very supportive community,
Very
exciting
supportive.
time. What do you
Have
think,
you seen
Steve?
some of the amazing covers in the past couple of years? Everything just seems to have amazing art these days. We have Felix Ortiz and a bunch of other people that are doing great work.
Yeah. Misspelled Jared. Hello, everyone. What do you think, Steve, about the whole, especially for the BookTube side, where you see it's going every day? I see these new amazing. My BookTube list just keep I just keep adding people. Like, I don't know, I'm going to watch all this stuff, but I see, it's like, gotta add this, and
I can't keep up. There's so many of them. Yeah, another great supportive community too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of covers, what went into covers for both of your books? How did you decide on a cover? Did you look for an artist, or what was that process like?
I actually have a fairly interesting story about that. So a couple months before Paladin Unbound was set to be published, the person that was supposed to deliver the cover was unable to. And so I had to make some very quick adjustment with my publisher and everything to find a cover that would work. And so I reached out to Zach Argyle and asked him, how his experience had been with his cover artist, who I thought was doing fantastic work. He does Patrick Stampfire's books and stuff as well. And so I reached out to Omer Brock-O'Neill, and he was able to accommodate me and get a cover done really quickly under the gun. He had COVID in the middle of it as well. I mean, it was, it was a total mess, but it came together great. I probably ended up with a better cover than I would have ever had otherwise, and couldn't have it any other way. So.
I love PO.
Agree with you there, Christopher.
Mm-hmm. So on my side, again, interesting story. I've always loved. You're probably going to hear me mention his name another 6 to 12 times, which is Brandon Sanderson, because I'm very heavily influenced by the Cosmere, Hard Magic Systems, etc. Even though I didn't start reading him until 2019, which is after I had already written book 1. So weird confluence of the minds and everything. But his Mistborn series, and I love the positioning of the characters on. I thought, well, this is sort of an 80s, 90s style fantasy style. You have the characters on the front, you have a backdrop that hints at what the story is going to be, the setting of the book. And that's what I ended up with Divinity's Twilight Birth. And I said, well, who did that for Brandon Sanderson? And I went through and looked up and found out it was Chris McGrath. And I thought, surely he's too invested in doing trad art. Surely that he's too busy to take on indie work. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to shoot an email to him, get shot down, and then move on with my life and find somebody else. Well, no, he actually was interested in doing it, and that he has indie pricing. So I was really surprised by that. And so this is actually a Chris McGrath cover, same guy that did Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn covers up through the Wax and Wayne ones, the new ones that's coming out. And then it's done all the work for Jim Butcher and a bunch of other people. And he actually emailed me probably 3 months after this came out and said, wow, the art that I did for this isn't the most popular art on my website. And so I don't know if I don't think I have book 2 cover art around here. Otherwise, I'd show it to you, not within easy reach. But another person I wanted to plug really quickly is Raphael Lucchini, who is doing interior work for book 2. And so he's actually really affordable for indies. So another great guy to look up. You feel free to send me a message and I can put you in touch with him. But his work is fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great piece.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's amazing. All right. Well, we'll get one just for we'll get one more close up of that cover because it is beautiful. When I saw it, I was like, wow, it is gorgeous. So, and I just how does it feel? I mean, and I'm gonna go backtrack to this point later. We talked about self pub. You do realize that Brandon Sanderson is technically self
Yes,
publishing
technically, yep. Mm-hmm.
stuff now. So I mean, and now you have Christopher, one of his cover artists, like where I'm going back to this whole indie thing, and now I want to add in the trad thing. Where is this going? This indie trad is the industry just merging and blending into one? Is one disappearing? Is one just getting more prominent? Like what? Like what's happening here? Where Christopher can go get Brandon Sanderson's cover artist, and like what's happening?
Jeff, thoughts or?
Yeah, it's complicated, but the gap is definitely narrowing, and I think it's because you're seeing more and more indie published product being received well in the community and getting notoriety and readership, and so that will attract better artists and better support around them, and so I think that's helping narrow the gap between the two. It's not just the big publishers that can get that kind of access anymore.
Basically, what I think you're seeing in the industry, and you've probably heard this before, is that what traditional publishing thought of as the mid-list is moving into indie, because you can make more money, you can get a better following than if you have to do all your work to get on shelves in Barnes and Noble. I know that because my publisher is sort of hybrid, that there are a bunch of costs involved with getting your product in the right place in Barnes and Noble. You have to pay a co-op to be up at the front with your new hardcover. You have to pay a co-op to be on the tables as you enter a door. So there's a lot of fees that publishers don't want to shell out for people that they don't think are going to sell as well, which is why the mid-listers go straight to the back. They go straight to the fantasy sci-fi section. And so they're not going to be as visible there. And so those people go into the mid-list. They go to emerging organizations like the Broken Binding. They go to people that are going to be able to put their hardcovers and paperbacks and signed copies directly in people's hands. And then they go and put their ebooks out on, again, with Amazon and Kindle. You have the self-publishing boom. And like Jeff said, that you have a bunch of quality product. And so the stigma is starting to fall away. And therefore, you're going to see sort of this muddying middle ground where I think trad is only going to be focused on bestsellers and everything else will slip through the cracks, and we're going to pick up a lot more contemporaries.
I think it's a very astute observation there. And I see that trend more and more. And for me being indie published, so in Canada, Chapters Indigo, essentially, I mean, Barnes and Nobles is here, but it's more online presence in Canada. But Chapters Indigo is the big monopoly bookstore in Canada. So, and I had to go and basically beg on my hands and knees to get, my books in limited stores in my area, wide geographical area, mind you, but still, and of course, straight to the back, right? To the, for me, it was a big deal when, they just kind of as a kindness. And because I'd sold a couple books, they actually put me in the best sci-fi to give me a little boost. Right. And that was like huge for me. Right. And, but that's my friends that are indie more and more, we're seeing that. I think both of you are on Broken Binding as well. All right. Both of you on Broken Binding as well. Yep. So am I. So
I'm going to have stuff coming out with them in a few months.
Oh, fantastic. That's fantastic. And yeah, they are definitely, shout out to Broken Binding. They are definitely becoming very prominent on the scene, and they're stocking, indie and trad. But then you're seeing people like Ryan Cahill outsell most of the trad authors on Broken Binding. Well, Ryan Cahill's outselling a lot of people, but do you know what I mean? It's just, it really has been quite the revolution within the industry,
Which it's interesting because so you have Broken Binding and then you have Amazon. I'd say that within the industry, those are your two main places that you go to for books, and that Barnes and Noble and all these other companies didn't innovate fast enough in order to fill that niche. And that Broken Binding, I know I've talked to at least one of the owners, but they saw a need before it actually became a need, and they were able to get ahead of the market. It's really fascinating if you start to get down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I think the responsiveness of organizations like Broken Binding, as we all know, trad publishing for all its strengths is very inflexible, a bit slow, a bit
Mhm.
sluggish to respond to certain things, to trends and stuff. So, that's Steve, where do you get most of your books these days?
95% usually Amazon is where I get most because I read mostly indie books or from the author's website too.
Mhm.
Yeah, which usually is a bit more cash in the pocket for yeah. So
Yeah,
thank you for doing that,
yeah.
Steve.
try to do that when I can. Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Dave said I'm going to need to quit my job soon to have time to read them all. Yeah, can, and Mr. Philip Chase, social media has also made it much easier for people to do the same with of their marketing. The internet will likely be one of the biggest game changers in the history of storytelling.
Mhm.
That's a very,
Absolutely.
yeah. That's a very great observation by Dr. Chase, who is one of the brilliant minds out there in the literary world. If you're, watch his channel, and he's one of those people that will dazzle you with some of his insights into
He
books.
he put out a review of Paladin Unbound today, actually, and I was
Hey,
sweating waiting on that one. Uh, you know,
congratulations!
yeah, it was fun. So much
Do
That's
you bring
appreciated.
out charts and figures for that too?
No, but he did do a great thumbnail of his face superimposed over Umar on the cover. So that was
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
That's awesome. I gotta go watch that after we're done. That's awesome. Also, I know Jeff is way too humble to mention, but you won a little piece of hardware the other day, didn't you?
well, going back, well, I won Indies today. Um, Best Fantasy of 2021 for that. So that was fun. Unexpected.
Congratulations!
Yeah,
Congratulations!
thank you.
Yeah. What was that experience like? Putting in for an award, waiting to see. I don't know if there was a short list. Oh, Philip Chase is giving you some love too.
Thank you,
So
Phil.
yeah, what was that like?
It was interesting. So, you put in for like a review slash the award, and they gave me a very complimentary review. I was really happy with that, and then you just wait because it takes months and months for them to cut through everything and for the schedule of the award. And so I just got an email one night, and you're the winner, and it was really exciting. I think you have to be careful though, because there are a lot of awards out there that are in it for their own benefit, not for the author's benefit or the community's benefit, and so you have to be selective on which ones you pick to enter, and how much you allocate towards trying to get into those kind of things.
Yeah, no, I agree definitely. For some authors, they typically allocate a budget, obviously a certain budget, especially indies, to marketing. And for some authors, predominantly most of that budget it goes towards awards. They're seeing the bang for the buck. But Jeff raised an excellent point that some awards are more credible than others, and I think if you stick to the more reputable ones, the ones that come with that certain reputation for excellence, there's quite a few out there. That your money will be certainly better served and better spread. And in terms of getting the real recognition, I mean, getting those awards can definitely impact sales and exposure in a positive way. And one of those, frankly, there's awards like such as SPFPO that are free to enter, extremely prominent now in the indie community. And think about that, right? I mean, yeah, it's for highly competitive, and but you're definitely getting the notoriety from putting your book in there. And
That's an amazing award setup that they have there. I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, it runs all year long. How many is it? What does it start at? 300 books or something like that, and cuts it down. I mean, it's fantastic, and it's the fact that everybody's putting in the time and effort to do that, to come up for self-published authors is amazing.
Oh, the blog's put in a ton of work. I know
Oh
that
yeah.
you guys, PL, with Before We Go blog, that you have, 30 books this year? So you're one of the big blogs. Bookborn's doing it. I'm trying to think of who else in our direct circle. There's Fantasy Faction. There is Book Nest. Whole bunch of great people. I don't know if any of the booktubers here are involved in it. I mean, they're watching the podcast.
yeah. Now, Steve, though, and I'll let him talk about it more. He's doing some amazing stuff with indies right now. If he
Oh,
wants to mention, I'm sure you two are
yes.
aware about the India course. Steve?
Yes, we were doing the Indie Accords this month, and I am a co-captain with Lana from Learn Lullabies. So we were having it's a readathon for this month of July, and it's just a fun way to find new books that you haven't read before, and lots of trash talk, and and some cool prizes at the end for the winning team. There's 3 different teams. It's not too late to join, so if you're interested, check out that site. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun month.
Do you mind if I do a quick plug for another readathon?
Of course.
So Lore Lullabies is actually part of this. I'm one of the admins over at Indie Fantasy Addicts, a group on Facebook. And for the whole month, so for the whole summer, starting June 21st, going through September 21st, we have our summer reading challenge. And so every indie book that you read, so one that is not published by the Big Five or one of their imprints, and that's primarily self-published or the small imprints, that if you read those, you can get points for submitting a short review onto the Indie Fantasy Addicts Facebook page. And you go through, there's a very easy to follow Google form. There's steps that are pinned up at the top. You'll be able to follow everything. We've made it easy. And at the end, you get tons of free ebooks, tons of free signed books, a bunch of stuff that all the authors have contributed. And there are a bunch of different teams. So the teams compete against each other for glory and eternal recognition. And then the individual people that participate get all those wonderful goodies that I mentioned. So you can walk away with a back catalog for next year just for coming and posting all summer. So come check us out at Indie Fantasy Addicts.
Awesome.
Sounds
Oh my
fun.
God. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Kudos to you, Christopher, on that. Like, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that you only find in the indie sphere, and it's think about that, right? It's just phenomenal. I'm blessed that I feel like when he used to play sports as a kid, and those. And they start picking sides, and I feel blessed. I was one of the first. I got picked by the Dark Knights on India Court, so I feel, like I finally made it.
There was a draft.
Yeah, somebody finally
do you
picked
guys
me.
have fantasy stats?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of trash talking over on the captains with the India Court. So there's a lot of good, all in good fun.
Oh yeah,
So,
definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
And I was wondering, speaking of awards, I wanted to ask Christopher and Jeff about if a new author asks you for advice on which awards to enter, which to stay away from, what can they look for signs that it's an award that you can steer clear of?
One thing that's a red flag is the entry fee and how much they're charging for that, right? Some of them are ridiculously expensive, and you have to kind of think of it, especially as an indie author, as kind of the return on investment, right? I mean, even if you win an award that costs you X, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to sell you that many more books that it's going to work out for you. But be nice to have in your nice feather in your cap, I guess. But at the same time, some of them are just very, very expensive and probably not worth going after. I sourced which ones I would enter by other authors and their experiences and what they thought was useful, what they thought wasn't, and I found that to be the best way. I again, going back to the community, it's such a great community. There's no one that's like, this is mine, stay away kind of stuff. So, reach out to other authors that have have some experience with the award stuff and see what they say and which ones they recommend and don't.
I would say if you're looking at cost effectiveness, you need to be able to look at what the return is. So Jeff mentioned that your main return is going to be on whether or not you think this award is going to get you more views, more clicks, more buys. But I would say that you're looking probably in the $50 to $100 range as max. If you're going above that, it's not going to be a solid return on investment. You have your free ones. You have SPFBO. If you're lucky enough, like I think that Ryan Cahill, to be able to get into the Stabbies or other free ones that are big. But that's going to be at your upper end. I personally, so the Ozma Award was very good for me. American Fiction Award, both of those very cost effective. Previous winners of the Ozma Award are like Robert Zangari, so that's very good for epic fantasy and gets a lot of traction. They host an award ceremony, and if you win, you also get a bit of a prize pool, so you actually make back your entry fee and more. So you might be looking at return on investment that way. SPFBO, of course, is probably going to be your best one. If you are a finalist for that, you're probably very well set. If you win it, you're probably going to be looked at by trad companies. So there's a lot of different notoriety. And like Jeff said, the main thing that you're looking at with an award is a feather in your cap. Once you have it, not to say that you need to win an award, but once you've maybe won one or perhaps two, you may not need any more. You will be able to jumpstart your marketing off of just that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And congratulations, Christopher, for how well you've done as well with awards, etc.
And I will mention PL. There's a lot of luck involved, and you even see that with SPFBO. So have a great cover, have a quality product, but remember that at the end of the day, there are various factors for why one book wins and another book loses.
Yeah, and I would piggyback on the whole award discussion that I would add reviews in there, and I'd also add the comment that the acclaim of even the review or the review site isn't always commensurate with what you reward, because for example, you have highly reputable review sites like Kirkus Reviews and Clarion for indies, who are extremely credible and extremely well respected, but extremely costly, right?
Yes.
Very, very costly, but now you're talking about when you're doing Kirkus. I mean, I paid for Kirkus. You're talking the $400 dollar-ish range for a review. Mm-hmm. This isn't for an award submission. This is just for a review. Clarion was even more. I believe it was $5 at the time. And I said for me, it's being a one-time thing. I was a new author. I set that money aside. I looked as an investment that, okay, this is a one-time shot. Hopefully I get positive reviews, which I largely did, especially for Clarion. And, but after that, that was it. So again, those sites are extremely reputable. Kirkus, and I'm not disparaging them at all. With all the prestige also comes the fact that, you as an indie author, they have an indie section, so it's very segmented. So they don't equate indie authors the same as they do traditionally published authors. So whereas someone like Clarion, they market themselves as an indie review site. They champion the indies. So, so those are all things you also have to consider. But beyond that, I'd say as a general rule of thumb, don't pay for reviews unless they are someone of that level. You have some other fairly reputable places, the readers' favorites, the readers' views, and things like that. But when it gets into the individual bloggers, most 99% of reputable bloggers will never charge you for a review.
Yes.
Right. So please don't. If you're an indie and you're new to the game, don't pay for reviews unless you're getting them from a Kirkus or.
I will stick a caveat in there that one way that you can do that will be reputable is that you find a service that a lot of authors have used and a lot of them trust. One that's up and coming is Escapist Book Tours. That they have done a lot of good work for a lot of authors, and all of that the funding that you pay goes towards organizing it. I don't believe the individual tour stops getting the money, but they get whatever book you send them. So a lot of work goes into it with making graphics, with making interviews and blog posts and stuff like that. And so that's what you're paying for. But the individual people are only in it for the book. They want to have something to read, something to enjoy, something to get invested in. So I don't know if either PL, you or Steve participate with Escapist. Do you?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so you agree with that, right?
I completely agree. I totally big plug for Escapist and and Justin Grossen, and so they're fantastic. I want to let Jeff pipe in, but I've already toured a John Kingdom with Escapist Tours. Phenomenal results. I'm touring the Last Atalanteans in the fall with them. I expect the same. They have the one thing about Escapist is that primarily, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the former Storytellers on Tour. They were the big indie fantasy tour site. They shut down and there's potentially permanently. However, Escapist has certainly stepped into that void and filled that gap for us. So and highly recommended. So Philip is right. I was remiss. Sorry, Christopher is right. I was remiss in saying that about someone a blogging site like Escapist that offers tours. Tours are an amazing way to get reviews, right? Because they do the work of finding you the bloggers, finding you the roadies, and so they come to you instead of you having to cold call, say, hey, will you
Yes.
review my book? So that's that's a wonderful story. I want to let Jeff get his.
I was just going to say, especially for a debut indie author who might not have a large presence on the scene yet or anything like that. You know, you spend a lot of time building up relationships with bloggers and everything, but if you're coming right out with your first book, you haven't had that opportunity yet, and so the blog tours are fantastic. It was really helpful. I was with storytellers and for Paladin Unbound, and it was fantastic. It was a wonderful service. I was sorry to see them shut it down, but
Absolutely.
good people have, as you said, filled the void. So
Oh, excellent, excellent. Steve, what's your do any of these things change, Steve, your buying choices in terms of how you select books? If you see, for example, you're on Twitter, you're pretty active. You see a blog tour coming up for someone's book, and you see some reviewers and some booktubers, perhaps that putting positive reviews on the book, and does any of this stuff influence you as a reader potentially, or how do you feel about, or do some of your friends that read, do they look to this stuff as being something that could potentially influence their purchasing choices?
I think I'm sure some of them do. I think there's so many books for us to read that we have to be really choosy about the next book or the kind of what our schedule is and what we're reading, because some of it, some booktubers are scheduled for the next year. I mean, they plan way ahead. So I'm sure it does impact some of them. Mostly what I get into is things that are recommended to me or authors I interact with. I end up put at the top of my list. So it doesn't affect me too much, but it's mostly word of mouth that I go on now.
Yeah, that is, and that also brings you. Thank you, Steve. That's the next point. That brings me to my point about, for Christopher and Jeff, about social media and that balance that we all must dance, especially as authors, between using things like social media to market and bring awareness to our writing versus actually writing the damn book, right? And I know for me, I wear a lot of hats. I consider myself now a blogger. I don't, if whatever that means. I'm fortunate. Steve and I are both blessed to work for the incredible Beth Tabler under Before We Go blog. Their banner. I do reviews. I post my Goodreads. I try and do that to help promote authors, and I'm an avid reader, so it's only appropriate that I post reviews that how valuable they are. So I love that aspect of giving back. I feel like I'm giving back for all the wonderful things that the community's given me. I try to do author interviews on my website, 6 Elemental Interviews. Of course, this has been one of my biggest highlights, the honor of doing co-hosting Page Chewing with Steve on his channel, which also helps promote great authors like yourselves, great creatives, bloggers, YouTubers we interview. But of course, I still have books to write and a regular job like you both do, and all this stuff. How do you balance, the writing with the other stuff that enriches your whole experience as an author, brings you all these great context connections that can, help you and help get your cover artist, help get you an editor, give you advice, commiserate with when you're down, boost you up, and give you a pat on the back. How do you balance all of that stuff with writing the damn book?
Well, for me, they sort of occupy the same headspace. So writing something on social media, planning something on social media will tire me out just as much as writing 3,000 or 4,000 words in a day. So I typically either just write or I just do social media. And so, like you said, you have to pick one or the other. And so I will often do periods where I just focus on writing, and then I will stop writing and focus on social media, and I'll bounce back and forth. Social media, sometimes it does feel like you're shouting into the void, but you definitely do enjoy all that networking, the ability to talk to people like you guys, the ability to come on interviews and do things like this. I would say that a lot of the focus is making it more organic. PL, you've struck a great balance where you are taking what you love about reading and blogging and making that part of your marketing, because people that you review books for are then going to go and say, well, this guy's had such great things to say about my work. He must have done something really good as well. I'm going to check out what he does. And so there is that balance that as indie authors, you want to support other indie people, that there's give and take, there's push and pull. And so like on my Instagram, I try to go out of my way to highlight people's book anniversaries or their book birthdays, their sales, things like that, trying to get people that follow me as much content for other authors as I possibly can, in addition to what I do myself. Because no matter how well, if I was Brandon Sanderson, I could write enough to satisfy everyone. But I don't write as quickly as Brandon Sanderson does. So my job is to uplift other people that write similar stuff that my followers are going to enjoy. So spread the love around. I think that's the biggest part of social media for indies.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but you have to be careful because it can be a black hole. I mean, you can get in there and like you said, productivity wise, I mean, I don't have that much time to just sit down and write. I have a lot of other obligations and everything, and so I find that I have to just turn it all off and push it aside. If I'm sitting here with two screens in front of me and one of them has Twitter up and one of them has my manuscript up, guess which one I'm going to end up spending more time on? I'm going to be staring at Twitter and chatting with people and looking at what meme someone put out or whatever, So I have to completely turn it off, or else I just can't get into a flow writing wise. So yeah, I think segmenting it is very important, and you almost have to kind of run it like a business where you have time for marketing, time for writing, time for and you have to keep those kind of segmented and balanced in an appropriate levels. So
Yeah, and that takes discipline and that takes a regimen. And fortunately, I think for most of us as booktubers, as writers, we can do that pretty well. You know what I mean? We do it, I believe, fairly well, considering the things that we have to deal with, especially as indies, because we don't have the power of a big traditional house behind us to take care of a lot of things. Although I would argue that increasingly, traditionally published authors are having more and more downloaded on them in terms of the marketing and the promotion. Like it just seems that that is changing. Oh, Philip's saying bye.
Yep. See you, Philip.
Hi,
Yeah,
Philip.
Philip.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, I feel that that gap is narrowing in terms of what indies have to put in and contribute versus trad authors. So perhaps you obviously have an opinion, folks, but yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Lana says you're really good at doing that, Christopher, and also having such a blast in IFA.
Oh, thank you. So glad you're enjoying the group.
And we did have a question from Brandy, who's just a few rooms over. Christopher and Jeff, when you talk about support of other indie authors, what are some of your favorite indie reads this year from other authors?
I can take that one first.
Sure, go ahead.
So I'll go ahead and do three. So first one is going to be Where Shadows Lie by Allegra Pescatore. She and I are working on some co-author stuff together. So she's somebody that I have a close relationship with, but her first book is an epic fantasy that takes a lot of your standard tropes of a court intrigue story and flips them on their heads. For example, in the prologue, and this is in spoilers because she talks about it on the back of the book, you lose the chosen one that was supposed to solve everything. Chosen one's gone. And then everybody else has to pick up pieces from there. A lot of diversity, a lot of great characters, even a disabled protagonist. Allegra has problems with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and so she brings a lot of that into her characters. So if you're looking for a great diversity read that is going to be from the perspective of somebody that has experienced these things themselves, Where Shadows Lie is going to be great for you. The second one is going to be Of Darkness and Light by Ryan Cahill. A lot of people talk about that. Ended with an incredible battle sequence that I thought was as powerful as many of Brandon Sanderson's battle moments. So he's definitely striking a chord with the right audiences. That's going to be great. His series is The Bound and the Broken. And so book one is Of Blood and Fire. And I'm talking about book two, which I just finished on audiobook. And then another one that I just started is Gunmetal Gods by Zamil Akhtar. And then he's also in the writing group that Jeff and I have recently formed. And it's essentially a Middle Eastern fantasy. It is a fictional version of the Crusades. and I am only a couple chapters in, but what I love about his work is that he does not waste a single sentence, that there is world building, there is character growth, there is some sort of development in every single word that he puts to page. I have not been bored for a second. So that's another great one. Even Daniel Green, so big in the booktuber universe, picked up Gunmetal Gods and loved it. So any of those three, you're not going to go wrong with.
Yeah, and I'd just add to that, Zach Argyle, his Threadlight series, I'm really enjoying that. He has book 3 coming out soon. So I'm wrapping up Stones of Light right now, getting ready for that. And Jonathan Navarre writes science fiction stuff. He's a fantastic guy and an amazing author, really good indie author. So really enjoyed both of their work recently.
Yeah, but all on what I haven't read on the TBR. I'm not sure if Christopher, you and Jeff have watched any of on Steve's channel. Steve, myself, Lana from Lower Lullabies, who's popped in, Taylor from Made Between the Pages, another amazing blogger, and Zamil himself. We've had some wonderful sessions together, deep diving into Zamil's books to date, and so I recommend you watch that. Fascinating stuff. Looks like Brandy's loving Gunmetal Gods. Yeah, he is a phenomenal author. Ryan Cahill, again, and I think with Ryan, what he's doing in the marketing side and in the promotion side is something that, I mean, other than your Will Whites, I haven't seen that yet of indies in my limited experience. So he's really taking the indie world by storm in terms of the sales and the marketing and the promotion and compelling writing. Obviously, I have his novella. I'll be reading that in August.
Which one, the Fall or the
Fall?
Exile?
I believe the
fall.
Yeah, the Fall. The Fall. So, but yeah, like just outstanding. Jonathan Navarre, I have his book. It's sci-fi, I believe. I have that. I already have it queued up for some point this year as well. Zach Argyle, I mean, I've said that Zach Argyle has Brandon Sanderson ceiling. If he I know that's a huge, but I'm serious. The guy he's talented, man. He's talented. He's really talented. So, but yeah, so many great, indie authors out there that are just, they're blowing it up, man. They're blowing it up. And that includes you two. And, no, don't sleep on Christopher Russell or Jeff Speight. That's they're two definitely the writers to watch. And I like to pride myself now, and my readings become a lot more selective, and I'm starting to buy those authors that you just know they're going to be 5 stars. So that's why I picked up both your books, because you just know, right? You hear enough, you know what I mean. You just know. So
I appreciate that, PL.
Yeah, and same goes for you. I mean, you're taking the world by storm right now, also.
Thank you. I wouldn't. Thank you. I wouldn't say that, but thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And you were both mentioning part of a lot. To be honest with you, a lot of what's been happening now, exposure wise, I owe to Steve from doing page chewing. So like as
he's shaking his head.
As Christopher and Jeff had both implied, it's a very symbiotic thing when it comes to you're giving back, but then you're also getting out of it so much, right? And again, I try to say as much as possible. Kudos to Steve for inviting me to be his co-host. I'm extremely honored. And it's not every day you get to do something like that. It's his channel. Like I said, I just show up and have fun, and he does all the hard work, the editing and all this stuff, and so it's pretty cool. So it's worked out really well. I think we've had a lot of fun. We've
a round of applause for Steve and all the hard work he puts in.
Yes.
Steve,
Big round of applause for Steve. He is way too
Steve, are you
modest.
taking a royalty?
The check is in the mail.
He takes his payment in exposure, just like everybody in Hollywood.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
And Jeff and Christopher, I was curious, what's your approaches to world building? How do you build a world from the ground up? What are some of the strategies you use when you're starting a world?
Down the rabbit hole we go.
Yeah, this could take a while. For me, Paladin Unbound, I mean, this probably won't surprise a lot of people, but, Evelium started off as a setting for a D&D campaign that I created to teach my kids actually how to play D&D, which is a game that I loved for pretty much my whole life. And, I way overbuilt for what they needed at their age for sure. And the campaign lasted like, 3 or 4 sessions, and then they wanted to go on and build new characters and do a new place and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, wait a second, I spent all this time, building this world for you guys, and and they were ready to move on, and so I wasn't. And so I took some of the characters that I had developed, the NPCs for that, and I kind of dove into it, and started writing Paladin Unbound, which I never thought I was going to publish when I started writing. I was just writing it for fun. I did not have, the aspirations of becoming a published author or whatever. It was not my initial intent. But as far as the world building goes, I think it just starts off with, for me, the very physical aspects of the world that you're putting in place, how that would affect life there. How magic would work in a world if there is magic, how a pantheon would impact the world. And, are you talking about polytheistic, society, or monotheistic, or something else? And all those things start kind of, forming what the world is going to be like for the characters to, experience, and how that's going to shape them as individuals, and how it's going to shape society and everything. Are there kingdoms or democracies or whatever, all the politics and everything? You have to take it all into account as you're building a world, even though 90% of that stuff is never going to be read by the author, by the reader, or anything. I mean, it's, I've got stuff like, how do the phases of the moon work, around my planet and stuff like that. And, and what number planet am I in the solar system that I'm working on right now? All that stuff that you as the reader are probably never going to see, but it all goes into, kind of the backdrop of building a real world for the characters to live in. So that's kind of how I start off. Thank you.
So I have a similarly fun story. And so I'll start with the end product. And I just happen to have this laying around, of course, because I go to a lot of book conventions and stuff. So this is the current world map for Lazaria, which is the world of Divinity's Twilight. And I seem
Oh, that's gorgeous. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. This was done by a guy called Care Scott Cartography. And he's on Instagram. He did Ryan Cahill's map for Euphoria. So you've probably seen something similar for that. But so that is the end product. The original product was a doodle on the back of a second-year thermodynamics lecture handout at my engineering classes at the University of Virginia. So this was 13 years ago now. And I was bored, and I flipped it over, doodled this map, and all of my books, everything spawned off of that. So I started with the geography. And I took that and I went, well, if you have this geography, how would a bunch of different nations interact on it? The mountain ranges that are impassable to airships in this world, that force them to go through narrow different channels where people can place fortresses, where you can block armies, where you can stall trade. What would the rivers have been used for? The lakes. Why would a city have been able to survive in a desert? How did they pump water up from deep underground? All these different things. So I started very much with a focus on geography. And then, like Jeff said, it's a question with magic. Well, in my world, people are very reliant on crystals that they draw energy out of, essentially like nuclear decay, again, bringing in my engineering background. And because of this, technology has gone in very disparate ways, that you have these airships that are able to float because of the energies these crystals give off. But at the same time, you have people still walking around with chainmail and bolt action rifles and different things where the technology hasn't quite caught up to what magic is capable of doing. And you have all these interesting anachronistic questions that if you're able to fly well, now that you're able to fly, you can project power, that your horseback falls away, that maybe you still have Drake or Dragon cavalry or things like that. But a lot of things get left in the dust. You stop using wagons, you stop using carriages, you start looking for other means and modes of transportation. And I think that is the best approach to world building. That you go, I've made change A, what things are going to spiral off of it? How are the dominoes are going to fall? What Jeff mentioned was the iceberg theory of world building, essentially, that the reader is only ever going to see the tip of the iceberg that sticks above water. Everything else that you've done below the water, they don't need to know, or perhaps you don't even need to world build, which is where you start to get a hollow iceberg, where you've only done this outer portion, where you have to convince the reader that the entire iceberg is there. Because you can world build forever. I'm sure that all of you know this, that you can spend, Tolkien spent decades on creating Elvish and all these different things before he ever wrote a world of The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, etc. But in today, authors are expected to have a book out. In traditional, you're expected to have a book out every year to 2 years. In indie, they want you to have a book out every 3 to 6 months, which I think that all of us are probably 6 months to a year on our release schedules for big epic fantasies. So you have to take a more direct approach. I call it world build as you go, that if you need something, you world build it. And originally I was very much more of a pantser. Now I'm more of a plotter, and I do more of it up front. But there are different approaches to get to the same place.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Sorry, Steve.
Oh, no, it's okay. Chris says both of these approaches are fascinating. You can see the genesis as well as the impact on how the story is told.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would definitely, and those are both very insightful comments from Christopher and Jeff, and very accurate. I think as authors, I think we've all been there where, we would just, there's days where instead of writing, I would love to just world build all day long, right? You know what I mean, guys, right? Like you can sit there writing appendices and creating more maps and detailing the maps already, but to the point of distraction, utter distraction, right? And I think now, as Christopher said, I've become a lot more strategic in terms of how I do it. And because in my writing, I'm exposing the reader to the world incrementally every book at a time, growing out from the initial smaller world and expanding from there. I think that, left to our own devices, we would be writing 3,000 page novels full of descriptions and exposition about the most obscure place in our world that really might not matter the plot, but and we have to force ourselves oftentimes to call that time
which
out.
is a skill you develop as an author. What is or isn't necessary. It's why I think that every author gets better after their debut book. I think that my sequel's better than my debut. I'm sure Jeff feels the same way. PL. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, without question, you hit the nail on the head. I think if we're not striving for continuous improvement as authors, then what are we doing here? Certainly, our readers are going to catch on if we're not, and our sales and reviews are going to reflect that. But I just, and I'm not here to get on a soapbox, sorry, but I want to give a note of encouragement to every author out there, especially the ones who haven't published a book yet, but they're going to. You do get better. And you do improve, and beyond that every single author, better late than never. True. Better late than never, bro.
Andrew's Wizardly reads, a wizard is never,
never.
Yes, he's always on time. He rhymes precisely when he intends to.
You were making cuckoos with the kids, eh? Yeah, okay.
That's a good excuse.
Okay.
Did you bring any for the class?
Yeah. We'll let you slide this time.
That every famous author, for the most part, got better with their next books. If you look back at the first books of many very well-known author, they would tell you that their first books were not very good, irrespective of whether they sold like hotcakes. So that's if take comfort in that. Authors who haven't published that, you learn your craft.
To give you an extra injection of hope, the Elantris was book number 13 for Brandon Sanderson.
Wow.
And when you look at someone like Sanderson in particular, and I haven't read, to be honest with you, I've only read snippets of his work, and I'm planning to do a lot more Sanderson reading in the future. I have 6 or 7 of his books on my shelves that I haven't read, and it's time, for many reasons. But when you look at his evolution and how many books he's read and how many iterations you can say of Brandon Sanderson have 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 gone since he first started writing, I think again we can all take comfort in that if we have a prolific career, we may feel like a completely different writer by the time we're finished, writing our books, and and that's not a bad thing, right? Evolution and growth and change is a good thing, and I think that I think the three of us that are writers especially would agree, and for Steve, who's a reader, who you've read, the first books of series and other writers, and what that improvement is also a process that comes with some pain sometimes, and you might have to sacrifice some of the things that you might think are really your strengths in terms of your work. Not always, and you might have to give up some subplots that you thought were really cool, and so I got to toss it out and get rid of some characters that are dear to you that doesn't work, and but at the end of the day, I think the product is going to benefit from that, and so will of course you and your reputation.
Beta readers and editors are your friends.
I was just going to say that, Christopher. I mean, it's.
Oh, I'm sorry. I take it back.
Especially for a new indie author. I mean, it's so easy to think that your book is ready to go and just throw it out there. But if you don't have objective third-party eyes on it beforehand, you can get yourself into some trouble. It's nice to share it with your friends and family and stuff like that. Odds are they're not going to give you the criticism you need to tighten up a book, to get it ready for the public. So getting it out there to objective third parties is really important. It's not easy when it's your first time, particularly, but it's important.
Yeah, and it is very hard to see your baby, take those shots, right? And that's that dichotomy of being an author. You want people to read your book, as many people as possible, but you also don't want them to say bad things about it. But that's necessary to help you improve. But at the same time, it's so, just like you send your kid to school, you want it to be the most popular kid, you want it to be liked, you want it to be, in the eyes of others, perfect. And obviously that's not going to happen, but that is part of the maturation process for yourself and your child, and it's the same with writing. So and that's a hard thing to accept. That first negative review is gonna drive a stake right down the middle of your heart.
You're going to get 1 and 2 stars reviews. The only thing you can hope for is that they're entertaining enough to be turned into Amazon ad copy.
Yeah, I mentioned it before, and obviously, and we've talked about this, Steve and I, and some others on various podcasts, that and of course he has the latitude to do this because of who he is. I love what Joe Abercrombie does with his negative reviews. Mm-hmm. He posts 1 stars, and he just it's hilarious. And of course, because he's Joe Abercrombie, a 1-star review is not going to hurt him, right? Yeah. 1,000 1-star reviews is not going to hurt him. So, I love the fact that he can. He's in a position where I love seeing someone who's in a position they can make fun of it to a degree where, for example, us as indie authors at first, that's not how you're feeling, right? But you know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Every one of those is a deep wound.
Yes.
Well, and when you only have 20 or 30 reviews out there or something, it doesn't take much to ruin your score, and it could be, the reasons you can get a 1 or 2 star review, you don't always feel like, it's necessarily deserving of that. I don't begrudge anyone for not liking my book or for having different tastes or whatever the case may be. But some of them you're just like, really, you had to go 1 star, and and it can really hurt a debut novel if that happens too early.
Mm-hmm. And Brandy does have a question. Is your writing your day job, or do you both have other careers alongside writing?
So I'm in the fortunate position where I can devote probably about half of my day to each. I teach virtually for the university that I went to, University of Virginia. I teach engineering courses. And so I'm right now I'm teaching summer classes. I have 15 students, and I meet with them an hour and a half each day. And then after that, I answer their emails. I prep for different things. And I also tutor students in various math courses in the afternoon if I have them. But because of that, I'm able to dedicate a lot more time to writing than if I was in an office. So as you can see around me, this is my office. It's a little bit messier than it really should be. But the bookshelf's in the right place. The dragon's in the right place over here. Yes. So that's all that really matters. But yes, fortunate position to be able to dedicate probably a little bit more to the day job than to writing, but still a lot of writing time.
Yeah, and I'm a professional investor. I'm a portfolio manager for an investment firm, and that takes up an inordinate amount of time. And so basically, I get to write late at night after my kids are in bed if I'm not too tired, or on the weekends when I say, "Hey, other dads are golfing. I'm going to lock myself in my office." Those are my opportunities. So fairly limited amount of time writing wise.
I have furry children. I have 6 crazy Shelties. I don't have actual children, but once you get to 6 crazy
Those are
Shelties,
kids.
they
They're
take up
kids.
almost as much time as living, breathing flesh children.
They're
No
kids.
doubt.
Fur babies are kids.
Not human children. They are flesh children.
And for both of you, who have been your biggest supporters through your writing journey?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, my immediate family, my wife, who's kind of put up with this crazy thing that I started doing that has taken up way more time than she ever expected it would. She's the first person to read everything I write. She does give objective advice and input, so sometimes I have to watch out for that. But she's been fantastic, and then both my sisters and all that have been really big supporters of my work as well. And my mother's read it. She never read a fantasy novel in her life, and she read Paladin Unbound, and didn't even give me a hard time for the violent scenes or anything like that. So it's all good. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of support from my family.
Same way over here. My family. My father originally read Aragon. He did a little bit more fantasy, a little bit of George R. R. Martin back in the day, but doesn't read too much. Was able to get him into it. He retires a colonel in the U.S. Army, so he has a lot of expertise on logistics, on military tactics and strategy, and so he was able to vet the novel for that. My mother is probably responsible for getting me into writing in the first place. She was an English teacher, recently retired 2 or 3 years ago. And so she's able to do almost an editorial style pass because of all her experience. But again, never read a fantasy novel like Jeff's mom. Still went through, read all the violence scenes. Got a little on my case for a fade to black sex scene in book 2, but we won't get into that. No, they're not really showing anything, and she's just giving me a hard time. But after that, Allegra Pescatore, who I'm working on co-authoring stuff, another great person, did a lot of beta reading for me. Her group, which is the Plot Mom Discord that you can go and join if you're into Discord. Indie Fantasy Addicts, and then just spreading out from there, all the different people in that group. All the great admins, Rachel Kuhlman, Andy Peliquin, which is Darkblade Assassin, then Rachel Kuhlman is Inked, and then The Lightning Conjurer, if you read any of those. Angel Hayes, and a bunch of other great people. So have a great community over there.
And are there any methods that both of you use to select beta readers?
Christopher, you have thoughts on that? I got to think a little bit on that.
I was going to say that you're trying to find people that read in your same genre, but that are, I would say, your goal is to find people that are 1 to 2 steps removed from you, that you can use the same people again. But you typically want those to be authors, because authors understand what they're doing as opposed to a reader. A reader, after 1 or 2 books that they really enjoy, is going to start giving you passes for things. That they are going to think that you must have a reason for making this mistake, or that it's going to be answered later, or perhaps you were lampshading this detail, and they'll keep going through the book and love it anyway. And so this isn't exactly what Steve asked, but I will say that you want some turnover in your beta core outside of what we would call like alpha readers. I would refer to alpha readers as more professionals. Like if I was to ask PL or Jeff to read my book, or even Steve, because Steve has had a lot of experience. Oh, he's shaking his head. No.
Oh,
See,
no.
Steve, you're a booktuber. You've had a lot of experience. You know what you like. You know why you like it. And that is an extremely valuable skill. And a lot of our listeners are also going to have that same skill. That skill is what allows you to eventually be an editor if you want to be an editor, or to be somebody that's a critic for big book awards or something like that. Like I said, people that are maybe 1 to 2 degrees removed from you, they can be friends, but maybe haven't read it before, or don't necessarily read that kind of work. People that do read your genre. So if you're an epic fantasy writer, epic fantasy. If you're romantic fantasy readers, because they know what works in the tropes. And then you want people that are, I'd say, semi-professionals or professionals that know exactly the nitty-gritty and can start to pick apart your plot map and the skeleton of it, rather than just the surface level, what we'd call the muscle or skin, which is like how you write the chapters and your grammar and syntax. We want them to be the alpha readers to be looking at plot details and the actual development of the book.
Yeah, and I'd say diversity is also very important. You don't want to have too many people with the same backgrounds, because they'll give you the same replies to everything. Similar things will work for them, similar things won't work for them. You want to mix it up so you get a variety of feedback from people with different backgrounds. I think that's really important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely subscribe to that. Sorry, go ahead, Christopher.
Oh, I was just going to say that brings up another interesting point: sensitivity readers, because their content warnings are becoming a big thing, and you can put a lot of different stuff in your content warning to try to avoid those bad reviews from people that may not gel with. If you have gore, if you have torture, if you have steam, various other. By steam, I don't mean steampunk. I mean like sex scenes or things like that. But the general term for that is steam. But so content warnings can help you there, but you can also have sensitivity readers that are going to go in and check on, well, how are you dealing with disabilities or ethnic groups or things like that? That you want that diversity that Jeff mentioned, to make sure that you as an author aren't tripping yourself up on something that you could have very easily fixed.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend, sensitivity readers, especially in the environment of 2022, and particularly if your books have any themes that could be considered, disturbing and or potentially controversial, because, and as an indie author, it's really important to remember that your reputation is very finite. You really have to be careful, especially starting out. But I'm not just saying starting, but at any point in your career, about how you're perceived in terms of your image and how you're presenting things. It doesn't mean you can't write about difficult topics. It doesn't mean you should avoid them. It just means that as Christopher has mentioned, especially with sensitivity readers, that they can definitely be an asset in terms of making sure that readers will say, well, you know what, Christopher, Jeff, Paul, you approach that with aplomb, and you handle that sensitively. You made an effort to be fair and objective and balanced, and present all sides and present a certain perspective from the eyes of the group or persons that you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So that is becoming more and more of a key to writing, especially in this century. So,
and just had a comment: nice Alduin statue for the collector's edition of Skyrim behind Jeff.
Yep, I see it up there.
Good eyes. Yeah, that's my that's on top of my D&D mini cabinet over there. So it's.
Oh, next time we're on, we'll have to do the tour of the cabinet. I want to see.
All right,
yeah,
so we'll do that next time.
Yeah, we got to see the tour.
Steam or spice level.
Yeah, spice is another one.
Yeah, a great alternative. So
what goes through your minds when you're writing spicy scenes? What do you try to take into consideration when you're writing those types of scenes?
Well, I can honestly tell you, Paladin Unbound doesn't have any spicy scenes in it. And not because I was scared to write them. It's because, to be honest, it didn't really fit with Umar, the main character. It's just not on his radar at all. So it didn't feel appropriate to just jam in some random, scene like that for the sake of doing it. So I really do not have that much experience in writing those kind of scenes. So I'm going to pass it to Christopher, who apparently, offended his mom.
Oh, no. I'm not some expert at it. No. Divinity's Twilight Rebirth, so the first book in the Divinity's Twilight series, doesn't have any of that. There is light romance. There are characters drifting closer to each other, but there is nothing that actually, there's no payoff. So book 2, there's a little bit of payoff, mainly fade to black, or what I've come to call fade from black, like people waking up in the morning. And so with those, I'd say that it's the focus should always be character development, because you can write erotica, you can write steam, but especially in epic fantasy, it needs to be doing something for the characters. Is this improving their relationship? Is this helping a character overcome their depression? Are they breaking out of their shell? Is this cementing an alliance between two people? Is there some sort of reason for this? And that a lot of readers, that you're going to end up with a disconnect. Some people don't want any of that. Some people want more of that. And so you can find a middle ground where, especially for me, where I'm not really showing much, but that I'm focusing more on those details that are going to appeal to all readers, that they want to know about these characters and how they feel, their emotions, and who they are as human beings. Or in my case, there's 7 different races. So who they are as mortals, as people that exist on a plane. I don't, something along those lines. We all use human beings, though, in our world.
And I would add that, there exists so many subgenres now within every, like, you can have fantasy romance. I'm about to read, after my current read, I'm going to read Reign and Ruin, which was the reigning SBFPO.
Congratulations to her, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Give it up for JD Evans, who we're going to have on the show at some point. That if you want to read more romance, you can actually read fantasy romance or mystery romance, or pick your genre. That there's and I do write some some esteem or heat in my books, not a lot, especially not Drown Kingdom, like basically one scene, but again, I feel germane to the plot, and as Christopher alluded, the evolution of the characters and development, things like that. And there is more kind of semi-progressively and to a certain degree in as the series continues, but then there's some books that really don't have a lot, because again, it doesn't figure into moving things forward. So, however, I will say, and I've said this before, that I am a romance fan, and I do love it as a genre on its own, and I feel that romance and sex is definitely part of life. It's part of realism, and if you're writing, fantasy, you don't have to be graphic. You don't have to include it all. However, it is part of life. So, if you depict it, even if you depict it, a bit more explicitly, there's nothing wrong, as long as your audience, as Christopher said, understands why it's there, what the purpose is, and what you're trying to do with that. But I will say, definitely in fantasy, I mean, as evidenced by, especially last SBFPO, you had Christopher Tarley's Bright Wash, amazing book. Wow. Incredible book that finished second as well, behind J.D. Evans. As much as, I think the perception was that perhaps fantasy readers, typically epic fantasies, didn't want a lot of romance in their books. Well, I think there's some books recently that do really well that are kind of,
both of those are on my TBR. I'm excited to get to them.
Yeah,
and we should do a buddy read for Reign and Ruin.
Oh yeah, Reign and Ruin is it's coming up. I'm currently reading. Wow, it's good, but damn, is it dark? I'm reading the darkness that comes before. I blame Steve. Sorry, he's over there. I blame Steve. It's Steve and people like Books with Zara that have got me into this dark kick. Where is it? Yeah, my version is the paperback.
Ooh.
It's incredible. Dark as all get out, but yeah, incredible. But so I've been on this dark kick recently. Malazan, the first book. So I felt it was a good time to kind of palate cleanse a little bit with some fantasy romance for my next read. So I'm going to read probably, I might finish this book by the end of the week and start JD's book on the weekend. So if you're DM me, Chris, if you're thinking of picking it up in the next little while.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but we want to respect your time because you're busy. We're so grateful that you came on the show to have two wonderful authors and human beings. I haven't had the opportunity to get to know both of you as much as I'd like to. However, I have had the honor of being, like I said, in writing sprints with you guys. I think Christopher or Jeff had mentioned that, and just getting to know you guys are awesome. You guys are great people. So, besides being
we
great
love
writers,
hanging out with you.
yeah, you guys are
Yeah,
awesome.
and literally anytime, anytime. And whether it's writing sprints or doing something like this, always happy to connect.
I did have one more question for both of you, and I've already asked PL this question, but I'd like to try and ask this of all the guests: is what was your first job?
My first job was blowing up balloons for parties for my mom's friend, and she had this little tiny office, and she took orders, and I'd come in like on a Saturday morning, and they'd just be like taped to the wall, and I would sit in this little tiny closet just with the helium tank and the balloons just for hours on end, and that was my very first job, and I still have fond memories of all those fun times there.
So I have to follow that. That's an
you
incredible first job.
That's a great.
Okay, so the first thing I got paid for was actually teaching Taekwondo. That I haven't taught in a couple years, but I'm a third degree black belt in Taekwondo, and so I used to teach that through high school and college. So anywhere from this was ATA, the American Taekwondo Association, and so we had tiny tigers that were 3 to 5, and then all the way up through adults, and so tiny tigers doing very basic stuff, and you're mostly just corralling them, trying to make sure they don't hurt themselves and other people. And then up to adults, which are a little more fun to work with. You can do a lot of cool stuff with them on sparring and forms and things like that, and self-defense.
Well, those are 2 great jobs. And Jeff, how many times did you inhale the helium and talk?
When you're a very early teenager sitting by yourself all that time, you can't help but do it a few times a day.
Can you do a high-pitched impression for us?
Or
do you need the helium? You need the helium.
I don't think so.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, as we're wrapping up, can you both please tell us, where to get a hold of you, what your preferred social media platforms are, about websites where we can buy your books? Yes, Laura. Yes, Lana, I want to read Rain and Ruin. That's next. So maybe it can be 3-way, buddy read.
Thank you, Brandy.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. But so tell us more about where to get a hold of you, so preferred social media platforms, where to buy your books, etc.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter like all the time, and usually accessible there at Jeff Speight. A little bit on Instagram at Jeff SP8. My book is available, on Amazon. It's actually still free for a few more hours. The ebook on Amazon because I put it up to celebrate the 1-year anniversary, Paladin Unbound. So it's still there for the time being. You can buy signed copies on my website, jeffreyspeight.com, and pretty much available everywhere else. So.
Okay. And again, Christopher Russell. This is the first book in my Divinity's Twilight series, Divinity's Twilight Rebirth. I like to call it a cross between Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. So if steampunk fantasy and a bunch of action and adventure is your thing, be sure to check it out. You can find me at all the same social media platforms that Jeff mentioned. My Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are very similar. It's going to be Christopher _Russell _author. You'll be able to find all the links on my website, which is simply ChristopherRussellAuthor.com. And if you want signed copies, it's going to be a lot cheaper to go through me on my website rather than going through Amazon or Barnes & Noble or another platform. And like Jeff, I have a summer event going on. The first book in the Divinity's Twilight series is 99 cents in advance of book 2, which is coming out September 14th, which happens to be my birthday. So it's going to be an awesome day.
Oh,
nice.
Awesome. Fantastic. Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Exciting stuff. Excited to be reading a lot of Christopher Russell and Jeff Speight in the future.
Yes.
So
awesome.
I've got to get those first books
and
down.
we'll all swap books because I have to read Drowned Kingdom too.
Oh, I'll be honest.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Steve, where do you prowl and hang out?
I'm on Twitter at Steve Talks Books. I'm also on Vero at that one MFer. And I can also be found on pagechewing.com with, we have discussions, we have a calendar there, and all the upcoming episodes can be found there. I don't plan anything personal without checking that calendar. Everything's there. So I don't know what I'd do without it. So if you want to get in, that's the best place to get in touch with me.
Yeah, check out. I'm sorry, but big boost for Steve. Check out Steve's channel. Besides page chewing, he has other author interviews. He does some amazing deep dives into some fascinating books with lots of incredible, very high profile guests. He does recaps for what he's been reading and doing on the channel. You name it, this guy does it. So great person to watch and for fantastic content, and obviously a hell of a nice guy. So I'm PL Stuart, so you can find me here with Steve doing page chewing on his channel. You can also find me on Before We Go blog. That's both Steve and I are members of Before We Go blog, www.beforewegoblog.com. Once again, shout out to Beth Tabler, our boss. She's incredible. That's where you can find my reviews and articles that I post on my website, www.plstewart.com. That's where you can find out about the Drowned Kingdom Saga, books coming out, things like that. I also do 6 elemental interviews where I interview creatives, ask them 6 questions, try to keep it fun and interesting. Christopher and Jeff obviously are on the list, so have to get them on there as well. And Twitter is where I hang out. I definitely that's definitely my preferred social media platform. Yeah, I have Instagram and Facebook, but I'll be trolling on Twitter most of the time. So yeah, find me on Twitter.
Nice. Cool, everyone. Well, thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day to hang out with us and just kind of shoot the breeze. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a blast.
Yeah, thank you. You guys are putting out great content. You jammed a lot into the last month or so. So appreciate you making room for us.
Yeah, this is juicy July where it's bursting with talent. So it's only fitting we have you guys on. And it's thanks to Steve again.
First and greatest, right? Or second?
No,
okay.
There you go. Yeah. Well, cool. And thanks everyone who came to hang out in the chat. It's always great when we have interaction and some fun questions and comments. It's always appreciated. So we will see everybody next time.